Hashtag when control meets its match. What happens when a woman who controls everything meets a man she can't control? Sophia Reed built empires. She commanded boardrooms. She never came second to anyone until she met a single father on a beach who made her question everything she thought she knew about power, love, and what it means to truly matter in someone's life. This is the story of a CEO who had to learn that being chosen isn't about being first. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if it moves you, hit that like button. Now let's begin. The Mercedes pulled into the gravel parking lot with precision that mirrored its driver's approach to life. Calculated, controlled, inevitable. Sophia Reed emerged into the coastal afternoon, designer sunglasses reflecting the ocean's blue expanse. The sea breeze immediately assaulted her carefully styled hair, triggering that familiar spike of irritation she felt toward anything beyond her management. Even on vacation, control was her comfort zone. She had exactly 7 days away from Reed Industries, the multinational consulting firm she'd built from a single office into a $500 million powerhouse. 7 days her executive team practically forced upon her after 18 months without a break. 7 days she'd reluctantly accepted after Marcus, her assistant, reasonably pointed out that dead CEOs weren't particularly effective leaders. Crescent Bay wasn't her first choice. Sophia preferred structured luxury, 5-star resorts with award-winning spas and Michelin-starred restaurants where professionals understood her time was worth more per hour than most people earned weekly. But her therapist, yes, even Sophia Reed had finally conceded to therapy, had suggested somewhere unprogrammed. Somewhere without agendas or itineraries. Somewhere, Dr. Chen had said with infuriating calm, where she might actually rest. So here she was, checking into a boutique hotel in a town with more seagulls than restaurants. The rental house Marcus found overlooked the beach, charming, according to the listing, which Sophia knew was real estate code for small and outdated. She was already calculating how much work she could reasonably accomplish in the evenings. The beach itself was quieter than expected for a Thursday in June. A handful of families dotted the sand, children shrieking as they chased retreating waves. An elderly couple walked hand in hand near the waterline, their unhurried pace making Sophia's chest tighten with something unnamed. She found a spot away from the clusters of people, spread out the oversized towels she'd purchased specifically for this trip, still creased from packaging, and sat with the rigid posture of someone unaccustomed to relaxation. Her phone was already in hand before she consciously decided to check it. 43 emails since leaving the city 2 hours ago. She was 3 messages deep into a response about the Singapore merger when movement in her peripheral vision made her look up. About 20 yards down the beach, a man sat on a faded blue towel that had clearly weathered many summers. He wore simple swim trunks and a gray t-shirt, his attention entirely focused on a small boy engineering an elaborate sand castle with the intense concentration only children can muster. The boy, perhaps 7 or 8, had dark curls that the wind kept blowing into his eyes. He pushed them away impatiently, his small hands packing sand with architectural precision that seemed far too serious for someone his size. No, 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 the boy muttered, loud enough for Sophia to hear. That wall's going to fall. The man, his father, she assumed, leaned forward slightly. What if you wet the sand more? Might hold better. The boy considered this with the gravity of an engineer reviewing structural plans. Good idea, Dad. He scrambled up and ran toward the water with a small bucket, his legs churning sand. The man watched every step, his body language suggesting that if the child so much as stumbled, he'd be there before the boy hit the ground. Sophia found herself watching them instead of her phone. The father wasn't conventionally handsome, not in the polished, gym-sculpted way of men in her circles. He had a face that suggested reliability rather than excitement. Strong jaw, steady eyes, the slight weathering of someone who spent time outdoors rather than in climate-controlled offices. His dark brown hair was cut practically short. His hands had the calluses of someone who worked with them. The boy returned with a bucket of water that was mostly empty, having sloshed half across the sand in his excitement. This enough? He asked breathlessly. Might need another trip, buddy. Okay. The child was off again without hesitation. The man smiled, a small, private expression that transformed his entire face. It was the kind of smile suggesting he could watch this scene 1,000 times and never tire of it. Sophia realized she'd been staring for at least 3 minutes. Her email sat unfinished. The merger that had consumed her last 6 weeks suddenly seemed very far away. She told herself she was simply people watching, as anyone might on a beach. But something about the quiet intensity of the father's attention, the way he seemed completely present rather than thinking about the next meeting, the next deal, it created a strange pull in her chest. When was the last time she'd been that present anywhere? The boy made 4 more water trips, each splashing away more than half the precious cargo. His father never suggested a better method or corrected his inefficiency. He simply watched, offered quiet encouragement, and helped pack sand when asked. Sophia caught herself creating a mental efficiency report. A larger bucket would reduce trips by 75%. Teaching him to walk slower would minimize water loss. The entire sandcastle operation could be completed in half the time with better planning. She actually laughed out loud at herself. Even here on a beach vacation, she was optimizing someone else's sandcastle construction. The sound caught the man's attention. He glanced over, and their eyes met briefly. Sophia looked away quickly, suddenly feeling caught in something, though she couldn't have said what. She forced herself back to her phone, to her emails, to the comfortable territory of problems she knew how to solve. But her focus had fractured. She kept looking up, watching the construction project progress with its inefficient, joyful methodology. An hour passed. The sun shifted, lengthening shadows across the sand. The boy's castle had grown impressive despite, or perhaps because of, its complete lack of conventional architectural logic. Walls leaned at precarious angles. Towers rose to different heights, without pattern. A moat had been dug with more enthusiasm than engineering sense, causing one whole section to partially collapse. The boy didn't seem discouraged. He simply rebuilt, his small hands never stopping. Sophia's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Chen Wei, her CFO. She almost answered. It was instinct really, but something made her decline it. She could call him back later. Tomorrow, even. I'm on vacation, she reminded herself, testing how the thought felt. Foreign, slightly uncomfortable, like wearing someone else's clothes. The boy suddenly stood up, brushing sand from his knees. I gotta pee, Dad. All right, buddy. Want me to come with you? Dad, I'm 7. I can go to the bathroom by myself. The child's indignation was profound. The man held up his hands in surrender. Fair enough. Straight to the bathroom and straight back. Yeah, don't talk to anyone. I know. The boy rolled his eyes with the world weariness of someone who'd heard this speech 1,000 times. Stranger danger. And, you're the best dad ever. The boy grinned, clearly deploying charm he knew worked. And I love you. And I'll wash my hands. The boy finished with a dramatic sigh. That's my guy. The child took off toward the public restrooms near the parking lot, kicking up sand behind him. The man watched until the boy disappeared into the building, then kept watching the door, his entire body oriented toward that single point. Sophia recognized the posture. She'd seen it in negotiations when someone was waiting for news that would make or break a deal, that absolute, unwavering focus. Except this wasn't a business deal. This was just a father waiting for his son to return from the bathroom. Just. The word sat strangely in her mind. She stood up, brushing sand from her legs, and found herself walking toward him before she'd consciously decided to move. Her body had bypassed her brain entirely, which almost never happened. When she was about 10 feet away, she stopped, suddenly unsure of herself, another rare feeling. What was she even doing? She didn't approach strange men on beaches. She didn't make small talk with people she didn't need to know for professional reasons. But he had noticed her movement and looked up, his expression open and curious without being invasive. Hi, Sophia said, then immediately felt stupid. Hi was the best she could do. She negotiated multi-million-dollar deals in 3 languages, and the best opening line she could produce was hi. Hey, he replied, smiling slightly. Not the practiced smile of someone networking or trying to impress, just friendly. I couldn't help noticing. She gestured toward the sand castle. That's some serious construction happening there. He glanced at the structure with obvious pride. Yeah, Leo takes his architecture very seriously. I think we're going for aggressively whimsical as a design aesthetic. Sophia laughed, surprised by the genuine amusement she felt. Is that the technical term? It is now. He shaded his eyes to look up at her. You're welcome to come closer. I don't bite. Can't speak for the sandcastle. It has a mind of its own. She moved forward and sat down on the sand near his towel, maintaining a respectful distance. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, smile lines, the kind that came from years of genuine happiness rather than social obligation. I'm Sophia, she offered. Daniel. He extended his hand, and she shook it. His grip was firm without being aggressive, warm without being clammy. His hand was definitely that of someone who worked with them. She could feel calluses across his palm. So, enjoying the view? The question came out more playful than she'd intended, and she felt a flutter of something in her stomach. Was she flirting? She didn't flirt. She had relationships that began with mutually agreed-upon terms and ended when they no longer served both parties' interests. Daniel's expression didn't change, didn't register the subtle suggestion in her tone, didn't perk up with interest or attraction. He simply looked out at the ocean, then back at the sandcastle, then at the bathroom door where his son had disappeared. Every part of it. He said simply, and she could tell he meant it. The response deflated her in a way she hadn't expected. Not because she wanted him to flirt back. She hadn't realized she wanted anything. But because his complete sincerity was so foreign to her world of subtext and strategy. He wasn't playing a game. He wasn't positioning himself. He was just answering her question. How long are you here for? He asked, making comfortable small talk. A week. You? We live here. Well, about 10 minutes up the coast. We come to this beach most days during summer break. Summer break. Right. School. Sophia searched her memory for the last time she'd had a conversation about school schedules. College, maybe? That seemed like several lifetimes ago. Leo's just finished second grade. Honestly, can't believe how fast it's going. Feels like yesterday I was teaching him to walk, and now he's reading chapter books and explaining to me why my music taste is vintage. Daniel's smile was affectionate. Apparently, anything from before he was born is vintage now. What do you do? Sophia asked, then immediately regretted how it sounded like she was qualifying him, assessing his value. I mean, for work, when you're not on sandcastle duty. Project manager for a construction company. We mostly do commercial buildings, offices, retail spaces, that kind of thing. Lots of coordinating contractors, managing timelines, putting out fires. He said it matter-of-factly without false modesty or inflated importance. What about you? I run a consulting firm. We help companies restructure, optimize operations, that sort of thing. She deliberately kept it vague. The moment people heard CEO or knew the size of Reed Industries, their entire demeanor changed. They either became obsequious and eager to impress, or defensive and resentful. Either way, the real conversation ended. Sounds intense, Daniel observed. It can be, but I enjoy it most of the time. The admission surprised her. When was the last time she'd actually thought about whether she enjoyed her work? It simply was her work, her identity, her purpose. That's good. Life's too short to spend it doing things you don't enjoy. He said it like a simple truth rather than some profound philosophy. The bathroom door opened and Leo emerged, running full speed back toward them. Daniel's attention immediately shifted, his entire focus narrowing to that small figure navigating between beach blankets and other families. Dad, there was a crab in the sink, Leo announced breathlessly as he skidded to a stop. Like a real crab. Not a big one, but still. Did you wash your hands with the crab watching? Yeah, he was very judgy about it. I think he thought I wasn't using enough soap. Leo's eyes were wide with the joy of this discovery. Daniel grinned. Did you tell him you're 7 and you know how to wash your hands properly? I did, but he just did this. Leo mimmed a crab claw opening and closing, which I'm pretty sure means more soap, kid. Well, you can't argue with a crab's hygiene standards. They're very particular. Vacations are better with people. The observation, delivered with such guileless honesty, hit harder than Sophia expected. She'd taken exactly 3 vacations in the last 5 years, all of them alone. All of them structured around wellness retreats or professional development conferences. The idea that this might be sad had never occurred to her. Maybe, she said carefully. I guess I'm used to it. We could share if you want. Leo offered with the generosity of someone who hadn't yet learned that kindness was supposed to be strategic. We're going to get ice cream later. They have really good ice cream at Rose's. Right, Dad? The best, Daniel confirmed. But he was looking at Sophia now with something new in his expression. Not pity. She would have hated pity, but a kind of gentle understanding. That's very nice of you, Leo, but I'm sure you and your dad have plans, Sophia started. We don't really plan, Leo interrupted with perfect 7-year-old confidence. We just do stuff? Dad says, the best things happen when you don't plan too much. Sophia glanced at Daniel, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. In the context of sandcastle building and ice cream selection, I stand by that philosophy. In the context of actual adult life, I do considerably more planning. But not about everything, Leo insisted. Dad says some things you just got to feel. Have to feel, Daniel corrected automatically. That's what I said. Sophia found herself smiling. Really smiling. Not the professional smile she deployed at networking events. These two had a rhythm, a way of being together that was both structured and loose, predictable and spontaneous. I should let you get back to your castle building, Sophia said, standing up and brushing sand from her legs. It was nice meeting you both. You too, Daniel said. Enjoy your vacation. Thanks. She started to walk away, then heard Leo's voice. Are you going to come back tomorrow? She turned back to the beach. Yeah, we'll be here. We're always here when it's not raining. Well, sometimes we come even when it's raining because Dad says getting wet never killed anybody, but usually we come when it's sunny. Leo's words tumbled out. Leo, she might want to do other things, Daniel started, but Sophia surprised herself. Maybe I will come back. The view is pretty good here. Leo beamed. Daniel's expression remained neutral, friendly, completely unaffected by any potential double meaning. Cool, Leo said, then immediately returned his attention to his castle, the adult conversation already forgotten in favor of the pressing matter of whether the East Tower needed reinforcement. Sophia walked back to her towel, picked up her phone, and realized she hadn't looked at it once during the entire conversation. Her email inbox showed 62 unread messages now. She opened the text thread with Marcus. Sophia, made it safely. Hotel is fine. Beach is quiet. His response came immediately. Marcus, fine and quiet, are words I've never heard you use positively before. Should I be worried? Sophia, I'm on vacation. I'm supposed to use different words. Marcus, are you actually relaxing or are you sitting on a beach answering emails? Sophia looked at her screen at the flood of messages waiting for her attention. Sophia, I'm working on it. Marcus, that's what I was afraid of. Turn off the phone, boss. The company will survive without you for a week. Probably. Sophia, very reassuring. Marcus, it's what I'm here for. Now, seriously, put the phone down. That's an order from your assistant, which I'm pretty sure violates several organizational hierarchies, but I'm doing it anyway. She smiled, and in a moment of uncharacteristic impulse, turned on Do Not Disturb mode. The silence was immediate and unsettling. Sophia lay back on her towel and stared up at the sky, trying to remember the last time she'd done absolutely nothing. The clouds drifted past in shapes that meant nothing, going nowhere in particular, unhurried by deadlines or quarterly projections. Down the beach, she could hear Leo's running commentary on his architectural decisions, Daniel's occasional questions and affirmations, the sound of two people completely absorbed in the present moment. She closed her eyes and tried to absorb it, too. The warmth of the sun, the sound of the waves, the smell of salt and sunscreen. All the things people talked about when they talked about beaches, about vacation, about relaxation. It felt foreign and uncomfortable and strangely like something she might possibly eventually want to understand. When she opened her eyes again, the sun had moved considerably. She'd actually dozed off, something she never did, never could do. Her mind was always too active, too full of problems to solve and strategies to develop. Down the beach, Daniel and Leo were packing up their things. The sand castle stood proud and crooked, already under siege from the incoming tide. Leo was taking photos of it with what looked like a child-proof camera, documenting his creation from multiple angles. Daniel glanced over and caught her watching. He raised a hand in a casual wave. She waved back, feeling oddly disappointed that they were leaving. It's just boredom, she told herself. Novel surroundings, different people. Doesn't mean anything. But as she watched them walk toward the parking lot, Leo chattering animatedly, Daniel carrying all their gear and responding to his son's monologue with the patience of someone who found even the 100th retelling interesting, she felt something shift in her chest. Not attraction exactly. More like curiosity, recognition, the same thing she felt when she spotted a problem worth solving, a challenge worth her time. Except Daniel Harper wasn't a problem. And he definitely wasn't a challenge she could approach with her usual strategic methodology. He was just a man who loved his son and built sand castles and existed with an ease in the world that Sophia had never in her entire achievement-oriented life managed to feel. She wanted to understand that, wanted to know what it felt like to be that present, that unguarded, that simply content. Or maybe, and this possibility made her breath catch, maybe she wanted to know what it felt like to be around someone who made space for that kind of presence, who didn't need her to be the powerful CEO, the strategic genius, the woman who had all the answers. Someone who looked at her and just saw her, whatever her meant when she wasn't defining herself by accomplishments and acquisition. Sophia picked up her phone and for the first time in years, didn't open her email. Instead, she just sat with the question, letting it exist without immediately trying to solve it. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in colors that didn't show up in conference rooms or corner offices. The sand castle stood alone on the darkening beach, its architect long gone. Its purpose served simply by existing, by the joy it had brought in the making. Tomorrow, the tide would take it. And the day after that, Leo would probably build another one just as crooked, just as imperfect, just as full of serious 7-year-old intention. And Daniel would watch with that quiet, steady attention that suggested he'd never grow tired of witnessing his son build and rebuild and build again. Sophia wanted to see that, wanted to watch it happen, to understand what it meant to invest so completely in something so temporary, so imperfect, so beautifully pointless by any measure of productivity or return on investment. She stood up, gathered her things, and walked back to her car. But she knew with the certainty she usually reserved for business decisions that she'd be back tomorrow. Not for the beach, not for the vacation. For the view. Every part of it. Would you like me to continue with the rest of the story?